Welcome back to Demystifying Cosmetics, the show where we unpack the science, systems, and stories behind the beauty industry. Today, we're going behind the scenes of something that doesn't get enough spotlight, manufacturing. From minimum order quantities to tariffs, staffing shortages to scaling strategy, manufacturing is where beauty brand dreams are either built or broken. And our guest today knows this space intimately. Andrea Cid is the founder of Miami Growth Machine, a manufacturing incubator helping early-stage CPG startups bring their visions to life. Originally from Santiago, Chile, Andrea has lived in 11 cities around the world and brings a global lens to her work in Miami. After a successful career in real estate and banking across Latin America, the US, UK, and Asia, she co-founded Cid Botanicals with her brother, and in 2016, her family acquired Concept 2 Cosmetics, a bath and body manufacturer in Doral, Florida. Seeing a gap in the market for agile, founder-focused manufacturing, Andrea launched Miami Growth Machine to empower beauty and wellness startups, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds, with the resources, flexibility, and strategic support they need to grow. Welcome.
Hey, Jennifer.
I always am very hesitant to pronounce city names because I know that locality, especially, you went to Harvard Business School, so you know from Massachusetts that we have very odd. So is it Doral? I've never actually
Doral.
Doral. Okay. All right. So apologies to those out in Doral. So as I said in the intro, you've lived around the world and built companies across industries. How do you think those global experiences help to shape the approach that you use now for cosmetic manufacturing and entrepreneurship?
I think when you're making something physical, or you really, really start to understand supply chain and the importance of that, as well as how the distribution of a lot of the products that we manufacture, we're extremely interconnected. So while we're and also very much connected to our local community of manufacturers. So there is very much a local ecosystem that then dovetails very importantly into a global supply chain, and understanding that is important to getting your caps, bottles, things that are being produced in a lot of different places, raw materials that are being produced in sometimes locally, sometimes abroad, and then being able to tie that all together and kind of understand that. So I think that's a great question, because I sometimes take it a little bit for granted that because I was able to travel and do a lot of things, and I was trained on conference calls in 3 different time zones and stuff like that when I first started, and what time is it in Singapore and London and whatever, and can we make this time work for everybody? But understanding how people work across all of those different places, but in particular on the supply chain side, and explaining that is what gets you across the finish line to product development, which is what you then want to start to produce at scale.
Have you observed any distinct differences in how supply chains function in different geographic regions? For instance, China has invested heavily in manufacturing, and so I'm sure their supply chain works a little bit differently than it does here in the U.S. based on availability of resources. Have you noticed any distinct differences between how the U.S. shows up in kind of the supply chain and how they procure materials versus elsewhere in the world?
With a lot of that, it's really about clustering, and then people start to gain expertise in their local thing, and then they go deep. So you just have to kind of pick and choose, well, where across the world is there a deep supply chain for glass, for example? So, and then you really kind of go by material and the way it's manufactured. So it's more like picking and choosing, well, okay, there are materials, if we're looking for tubes, there are some excellent vendors in China, but we also have, depending on the MOQs and the particular types of closures that you're looking for, Brazil might work as well. We might be able to find some other vendors in Mexico. And so there are different places that have expertise in different things. But then like that's where that competition comes in. It's a global competition. And then the US is a part of that. The US does some things extremely well and very much in depth. And so like you're looking for those pockets. I don't see like a difference in how I engage if I want to. We're looking at global vendors, which is why it's so important that we have that flexibility. Of course, if I can find something at a great price in the way that I want it made in the US, we want to do that. It's easier. And that's why we work with so many local vendors here to get clients across the finish line, because there is a lot of expertise here in Miami. And I think that's probably a surprising thing. People don't realize how much manufacturing is going on in the buildings as they're maybe going down 836 away from the airport towards the beach.
Flying into Miami, you see all the warehouses.
You see there's stuff happening inside it. And yes, and there are key partners that we've developed here to get things done, especially when we need more options as some foreign vendors it becomes more difficult to get things from abroad.
Yeah, and I think that really highlights this kind of concept of, if you want a supplier that does a very good job, they will have to have a deep expertise in it. And so it's not really this jack of all trades where you're like, well, we can make glass, but we can also make cosmetic products, and then we'll be experts in engineering, line filling, each of these domains that goes into filling from, ideation to commercialization requires, a lot of people and a deep understanding and a skill set really that I would argue is not that learnable in a classroom setting, right? There's a lot of work that's learned.
It's hands-on.
Like maybe from others, right? Passed down.
I don't know if people still do that. Exactly. And one of the things, for example, that I think the U.S. can be quite competitive in is paper. Anything that's like secondary boxes, case packs, even labels. Once you get to the point of a minimum order quantity, maybe of around 5,000, it doesn't have to be insane amounts. The use can be actually quite competitive in those areas, and then you're adding additional costs if you're bringing it from abroad. It can still make sense, but that's the thing you do when you quote. You quote U.S. vendors. I have a Colombian vendor for labels. We have Chinese vendors for labels, and some of them may have different expertise. If I need a hot stamp, there's maybe one that can do it versus another that's not really their wheelhouse. So you start to really get very granular on product development. I mean, I know you know this, so much detail, so much little detail, and that really makes or breaks how something is going to be produced. And at the end of the day, you get this beautiful product, but there was a lot of decision making that went into every little aspect of how that shows up on a shelf.
In the intro, I kind of alluded to kind of manufacturing being a make or break, and we're seeing a lot of smaller brands emerging and being very competitive in the space. But the reality is that there's also kind of what's happening. I have observed, and maybe I'm wrong, but in the past, 5 to 10 years, is that there are there was more small manufacturers that are now being bought and kind of under a single umbrella and have increased their minimum order quantity. So telling brands, well, we can't do anything under 50,000 units. And that can be very cost prohibitive. If you don't have the sell through, you're sitting on a lot of inventory. So when we talk about small batch in practical terms and kind of the Miami growth machine that you support, what does that look like, and how can we help brands think about what small batch means for maybe volume, cost, and in lack of flexibility, I would say?
If you're starting and you're launching, even if you're a bigger brand, we have clients that are in major retailers, but they launched new products with us. Because even my own brand, Concept 2, which we can make container loads and we export to 55 different countries, we still don't launch with 50,000 units, 30,000 units. When we put out a new product, I want to test it with our clients. And then I want to scale up when we get purchase orders. And that's what I would recommend for any, either large or small, or indefinitely if you're just starting out, and definitely if you're starting to do something slightly innovative. Like if you're changing something, you're going to want to test it. You're going to want to put it in people's hands. To do that with a lot of inventory is a lot of risk. And invariably, no matter how many times you've done product development, you're going to be surprised by things. So I think having an understanding that iteration is going to happen and is a good thing, and that should be baked into the way that we're launching products. But to your point, manufacturing is not geared towards that. And even now more, I think the consolidation and trying to figure out how to make that work, I understand the point of view of the manufacturers. They're not trying to be complicated and difficult for entrepreneurs. Yeah. They turn on a machine. They need to have the volume there because they've got people and time and all of that change cost that goes into that. So I understand why if they turn on a machine, they want to produce at least 30,000 units. Yeah. We're in a very unique situation. And that's why I was so excited when I was thinking about this during the pandemic. Like, why isn't there any type of incubator? The way that we have test kitchens for food, the way that we have incubators for like tech and hardware, software, we have all of these different options for entrepreneurs to go in and tinker and figure things out, test stuff in a small cohort and then expand. I didn't see that with CPG, with cosmetics in particular. I think the reason we're able to do it is because we have our own facility. We own it. We have a 40,000 square foot facility. We have control of the lines, and we're using the extra space and time that we have on those machines with almost the same staff. Although I've been growing, and I'm now we're hiring dedicated, more and more dedicated MGM employees. The fact that I can piggyback off of these two companies is what makes it work. If I had to start from scratch and just do co-man work and not have that support from the Concept 2 side, I think it would have been impossible to start from nothing. It's allowed us to be flexible. It's allowed us to work in the same way that we work for ourselves, for clients. And then, yes, we do not have minimums. If you need to do a small batch, a 25 unit batch, we'll do a small lab batch, test it out. And this has happened over and over again with so many clients. We do a small batch, we do 500 units. The next order is 1,500. The next order is, they're up to 5,000. Suddenly it's like, wow, we've scaled. We really need to increase. And now instead of putting you from the lab to a smaller machine, I'm putting you on the larger machines. And that's how we do it for ourselves. And so that's the same approach that we've brought to clients.
Okay, real quick. Raise your hand if you have dealt with active instability. If you have ever opened a jar of retinol cream and smelt an off odor, or noticed your formula went dark brown, chances are you are dealing with active instability. It's never fun when the formula you've been working on goes south and the due date is only days away. That's why we've encapsulated the trickier ingredients to work with so you can kick the stability struggle to the curb. From retinol to vitamin C, we make it easier to work with those ingredients that typically give you that 3 p.m. headache. The cellulose shell shields the active from outside exposure, things like air and light, that are likely to cause active breakdown, giving you the power to create stable and effective formulas without the trial and error. Ready to quickly create effective skincare formulas? Discover Tagra's Cellucaps line by going to tagra.com/cellucaps. So, have you encapsulated yet? Now back to the show.
So I'm working with a client right now who's kind of in the boat where, they're really wanting to launch kind of this low volume number of a product just to kind of see how it goes. But the minimum order quantities for the raw material inputs are fairly high. And so, I haven't had the negotiation experience before of talking to raw material vendors, but I'm curious if in your case, especially because you're catering to individuals that are in that space, are you able to have conversation with raw material vendors saying, listen, I know you have an MOQ of 150 kilos, but we only need 10. Can we get 10 now? And if this is successful, then yes, we get that 150. Are those conversations that actually can be had for anyone listening out there that needs to have them?
We get a lot. One of the cool things about kind of being a hub for a lot of different clients and for ourselves as well, we get a lot of raw materials vendors, packaging, all sorts of different supply chain vendors coming to speak to us at the plant. And I'm always asking them that question. What we do, depending on the product, depending on the positioning of the brand, when we formulate, or if we're reformulating someone's product, we really look at the supply chain very carefully and the stage that they're in. So I would start by formulating in a way that doesn't peg you with a large supplier just yet, unless it's absolutely necessary. We have clients like that started like that, but it was a conscious decision. It wasn't a surprise. It was like, okay, we're going to go with this proprietary blend of this one raw material because it's important to the brand and it's differentiating them. And we know that they have a 5, 10, whatever it is, kilo minimum. And so that's just what's going to happen. We've decided that's going to occur. So it's not a surprise.
That's just the cumulative cost now of the product is the overage, right?
But I would rather, as someone starting out, that they work with raw materials that are easy to get from a lot of different vendors. Because if you start to peg yourself into some proprietary blend, that might be a blend of different inkies that you can just put together from, there might be alternatives from a formulating side that will still give you lots of options so that you're not, because it's not just the MOQs. In a lot of cases with those vendors, you could be waiting 3-4 months for an ingredient.
Yeah.
And so
if they discontinue it, you have
or they change
no
it,
other options.
You have to reformulate. So I like to keep it simple unless it's a choice to make it more complicated for a particular reason, that we understand. And then, yes, there have been times where I've had conversations and I'm telling them, look, I have 4 clients who are looking to, and I can't put your ingredient in these formulas because your MOQs are too large. And we've been able to, and they're listening. They're starting to themselves, and it doesn't necessarily have to be you making that negotiation. They're hearing it from so many different places now that they're starting to break case packs. And of course, they're going to charge you more per unit for it,
yeah.
Which is what they should do. But then allow us to get our foot in the door with this and sell us a kilo. And I'm hearing that more and more, that they're starting to figure out how to do that because they want access to these indie brands. They want to see where the next big thing is going to come. And that means you have to be a little more flexible on the R&D side.
And I guess, kind of maybe in line with that, a lot of different industries, including personal care, it has, started to see the trend of what they're referring to as shrinkflation, right? So consumers are looking for smaller sizes. How has that maybe impacted any of the manufacturing that you do? Have you started to observe the, desire to have non-traditional, smaller size packs? And, how can manufacturing evolve to accommodate kind of these consumer whims?
What I've seen, that will be kind of a factor when you're choosing your packaging. And depending on your size and whether you want to go full custom, which a lot of people are not going to do at the start, you're going to be using the packaging that is readily available, that already has molds that many people are making. So we're seeing minis. We're seeing a lot of discovery set trends, particularly for fragrance, where you're still buying. So they're not giving it away. But if you want to try all 4 and then pick the one that you want, that's kind of essential for a lot of fragrance brands or anybody that's playing with fragrance. So I think that discovery set part, that's fine. We can fill big or small. That it's not a big change from our perspective as long as it's something that's in stock. But what I am seeing more, and maybe this is less on a manufacturing thing, is bundling. So clients that are doing quite well with on their e-commerce platforms, they're figuring out how they're targeting their end consumers, and then offering discounts for bundles. And that way they get them more in the door, and then they get more retention on repeat sales. So you don't necessarily have to change your packaging, is I guess my point. You can maybe be clever with the way that you're bundling things online virtually without having to make any changes to your supply chain and reprinting and relabeling or doing anything like that, and get that boost of like, oh, I'm getting a deal and I'm getting more bang for buck, which I think is what ultimately people are looking for, because people are more cost conscious.
Yeah, I am a sucker for the bundling. Whenever that thing pops up, that's like, would you like to add this for $10 more? And I'm like, absolutely, and then never use it. So yeah, they get me. They get me. Let's talk a little bit about kind of how current geopolitical economic woes are impacting labor and workforce. So kind of the dynamic. So, I think there maybe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, have been some labor shortages in the manufacturing space in the U.S. and maybe largely immigrant or globally experienced workforce. How is the manufacturing environment adapting to kind of, the challenges that are currently being faced with, access to, the U.S., getting into the U.S., to even things like longer supply chains or tariffs that, kind of have made some materials unaffordable?
I mean, it's a challenging time to be in any type of manufacturing, I think. All of the things that you've mentioned are harder now than they were maybe 10 years ago. So I'm very conscious of how all of these things are impacting our workforce and our ability to just maintain machines and do a lot of the work that we need to do. We have been, because we've been growing very quickly, we've had to really look at how we're scaling. And all of those things you mentioned have made everything much more complicated. But as entrepreneurs, we figure it out. These are the challenges and the problems that we are facing, and then we try to solve one thing at a time. So yes, I think Miami has been a place where we've had a very strong immigrant population that has come in, and then they have people that then are coming in after that. And so that has allowed us to always have like a really strong supply of people that we could tap into. And it was fairly easy for us to say, okay, we need several more people in this area. Do people know people that are looking for work and whatever? And so like, I would say during the pandemic, there were challenges. This is different. We're finding it hard to find people that we really want to bring on. And I'm maybe like a few months ago, we hadn't felt as much of a pinch, but I'm seeing that more and more. It's still possible, but our pool has shrunk significantly. And I'm not getting like that influx of people that was coming in on a regular basis that were very skilled and were eager to come in and they could work in the manufacturing area. So that's finding people is a big thing, particularly mechanics, machinists. That's probably the biggest. That was already before, has always been challenging, but we were able to solve that by having people that were super trained in their countries, and then they moved to the U.S. and they're going to be applying that skill set here. I would love to see that skill set develop more, in South Florida, there's not a lot of people that have that skill set here, and it is challenging to find that. The other thing I'll say is that we're able to scale by improving our machines and using that to be able to increase productivity without necessarily having to hire more people. But that means I need really good machinists to take care of those machines.
Yeah.
And when we need something like a spare part, all of those machines are made abroad. And there's some stuff that's made here in the U.S. There's not a lot, and the stuff that's made here in the U.S. has to be custom. So if I need a part from Italy, if I need a part from China, I'm waiting, and now all of that's more complicated. So we've been looking at some local toolers that are able to reproduce things locally, but it's a bit of we're trying to figure it out, but it's a bit of a stopgap. Like, you're kind of Frankensteining some stuff and really trying to see how you can make it work. Or I'm going to wait months for a piece, it's challenging. I gotta tell you, it's exciting times because we're growing so much, but at the same time, I literally wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, oh my God, how am I gonna triple production on this type of labeling? I need this. It's a huge puzzle that needs to get fitted.
I was laughing at kind of your story of this piece from Italy. A number of years ago, I was on site for first production of a product we were doing, but it required a very specific puck that was being sent from Norway, somewhere in the Arctic Circle. I don't know why. And it just so happened that the shipping company decided to go on strike mid-ocean in the Atlantic. And so I couldn't get this piece, and I was on site for first production, and I just had to keep staying in hopes that it would be delivered, because if I left and then they couldn't run it, and it was terrible. It was like they literally had a strike, and then we're like, well, we're just going to park this boat in the Atlantic and not, deliver goods. So it was interesting, but definitely, demonstrated how interconnected we are to a very global supply chain.
Indeed.
So going back to, kind of the access to machinists and, if a piece breaks like that, I've not had the opportunity to go to some facilities in China, but have had some coworkers who have, and then have returned with videos. And, a lot of what they're doing is highly automated. So really automating all of these processes that maybe are more manual. When you think about that, there's a large investment to it, I assume, kind of have you evaluated kind of the risks and benefits of, integrating, robotics and automation into processes, and, what do you see as maybe the trade-offs that you get there?
I think in many cases, what we're doing we haven't gotten to that point where it requires more automation or more robotics, but that's because I think we're on the smaller side of we're targeting smaller clients ourselves. We're not making millions, runs that are million unit runs or anything like that. So for us and for what we need, we just need machines to run well, and more modern machines to run faster and better, and that will triple, quadruple production without having to add additional teams. But I really want to highlight the fact that, yes, automation, all of that's phenomenal. One of my closest friends specializes in that and goes from plant to plant to basically consult on large scale manufacturing. He does a lot of beverage, a lot of really large batches that they're doing. So there is that expertise, but you have to have the person expertise as well as the machine. Those two things, just one or the other, is a recipe for a lot of frustration. So that's what I need in the US right now. Is I need a pool of technical expertise at the level that we need, which is not necessarily super AI robotics. I just need really competent machinists and mechanics. And you can buy a beautiful machine. You can bring it from wherever, here in the US, Italy, China, Poland, wherever. If I don't have people that can maintain it, or or start to improve it, I mean,
it's just $1 million paperweight, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like, what are you doing? So, and it can be worse, because you could creating just a lot more problems down the line, and then that puts pressure on the staff to get more done in a way that's not efficient. So I think that you need both. You need proper machines and people that can maintain it and can work them in the way that they're meant to. Like, these things are, I don't know how, like, if there's like a good analogy that I mean, more like cars. Like, you know, like, do you go to the dealership? Do you go to your cousin down the street? Do you, like, how are you maintaining it? Both could be okay. One could be terrible. One could be like better than the other.
It's a little bit of like art and science. Yeah.
You know, it's like if something happens to like your, like, is it going to take six months and you're not going to have the part? Like, all of those things are part of being able to have a functioning manufacturing facility.
Yeah. And I don't see that as being like a problem that's going to be resolved tomorrow. And I almost feel like, you know, when you and I were growing up, right, college was really seen as the like only route you go. But I'm starting to see the shift. You know, I have a 16-year-old son, and the emphasis on college is still there, but there are so many more opportunities to just go into the trades. And so I'm hopeful that this will be solved by kind of the next generation, like my son's generation, that do, you know, kind of value a little bit more of non-routine or non-traditional education. But until then, you know, is the stopgap, like, you know, when you buy a piece of scientific equipment, generally that comes with a person that comes on site and says, this is how you use it.
Well, you'd be surprised. Sometimes, like, you just get a machine, it gets shipped, and like, it's like, figure it out. And maybe there's a manual, there's a little tiny manual. Sure, yeah. It kind of depends on what you're purchasing. So sometimes you get what you pay for, but sometimes you don't have, it's not like we have a lot of choice, right? Because there's not that much competition for some of these specialized types of things. So I do think it's interesting that younger generation is looking at trades. I still think having higher education is fundamental. Even if you're going to run a plumbing business, if you're going to run an electrician business, I think you should take an accounting course, understand, like, whatever, if you're an artist or an electrician or an engineer or whatever, I still think some higher education is going to benefit you and be a good thing for anyone that's going into a long-term career. You'll benefit from those things, but being very conscious on like what you're interested in, what you want to do. Yeah, I would. There was, I guess, a bit of a stigma before, maybe more like a snobbiness about people that do this kind of work versus people that do this other type of work. I mean, I don't, like, this is my life now, has been like for more than a decade. I learned so much from the people that work here. I didn't know anything about manufacturing when I started, like, at all. Like, I came from finance and real estate. So, like, I was talking to a client yesterday. They're like, "How did you pick all this up?" I'm like, "You're like doing it." Like, and actually asking the people on the lines, the machinists, like the blending, like, all, they know, they've been doing it a while. So asking questions and having them tell me, would this be better or would this be better? Like, what do you prefer that we run it? Like, it has to be collaborative. If, like, they were expecting me to come in and be like, here, we're doing it this way. Like, no, I don't think that would not have gotten me very far. And then, after a while, you start to figure it out. It's not as complicated you might think, and you learn by doing.
Awesome. Well, to close this out, for anyone that's wanting to launch a beauty or wellness brand today, what's the most important thing that they should know about manufacturing?
Well, what I always tell founders is you don't have to, like, we are happy to take care of that operational side. The most important thing from your perspective as a founder is to really have your branding right, which I think people are surprised when I say that, because they're like, oh, but you're not branding. No, I'm not branding. I'm not graphic design. I'm not gonna help with that part. I know people that can, but the clients that have a real clear view on who they are, their positioning, their brand, and that means that they've gone through the exercise. Like, let's remember that we're creating physical products, right? Yeah. So this isn't a website. This isn't a service, something that this is a tangible thing that's going to sit on a shelf on someone's countertop in a bathroom. They're physical things. The more clear you are on your branding and positioning, the easier it is for me to do my job. Because then what vendors, there are so many options. You will get completely inundated with analysis paralysis, decision-making paralysis. But on the other hand, if you have a solid brand guide, you know where you stand on things, then it's like this cap or this cap, it has to be this. It has to be this type of thing. We're going to do a secondary box in this way. Sustainability is a component. So then we have to we're looking at certain types of materials. What your price point? That means that these vendors are not going to work. These others might. So all of that, when it comes down to picking and choosing all of those little details that we talked about in the beginning, all of that is infinitely easier when you're solid on your branding. If you're still kind of like, oh, well, I haven't figured that out yet. I'm still looking at oh, no, go do that. Go do that. Enjoy that process. It's your baby. You have to love it. And then we will help you interpret that into a physical thing. That's how you want to do
Awesome. I love that advice.
Order of operations.
Yes, I love that advice, because as somebody that does occasionally consult for doing product development, hands-on formulation, that is very helpful for me.
The formulation part, I didn't even mention that. How do you formulate a product if you what do you mean by clean?
Yeah,
I need a definition for that from you, because there's no generally accepted one.
Yes.
So and then are you using but what does that mean when it comes down to the preservative system? What are we talking about? So all of that will where people aren't clear, we end up having to redo things. Oh, I didn't realize it meant this. And I'm like, no, that's why then, and you spend time. Then weeks can go by. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for today. I hope that we start to see a clearer future for us in manufacturing and the U.S. in general. So thank you.
People need stuff. People need stuff, no matter what we're all doing, no matter where the economy is going to go. And at the end of the day, we still need to manufacture things. And if we can be competitive and creative, then, I think it's also, I think, particularly as complicated as the economy is, and could be in the next few months, a really good time for entrepreneurs who are thinking about starting stuff. What a great time to put all of that R&D, all of that ideation part in now, so that then you can look at launching something new. So anyone, I'm always happy to talk to entrepreneurs. You can go to my website and sign up for a consult. And I love talking to people about the new stuff that they want to make.
Awesome. So what is your website for everyone?
MiamiGrowthMachine.com. And on the upper right hand, you'll see a contact us, and you can set up a time, a call, or if you're in South Florida, come visit our manufacturing plant. You can get a tour.
Great. Well, thank you again.
You're very welcome, Jennifer. Take care.